What would you do if your boss asked you to do something unethical? Most people would answer this question with saying that they would say no or resist. But the way our mind works is that most people would actually follow what an authority figure would ask them to do. And this is the way the authority misinfluence tendency works. So let me explain further. Charlie Munger, he describes this tendency in the book Poor Charlie's Almanack in the chapter Psychology of Human Misjudgement. So Charlie basically writes that our mind is programmed to follow a leader because evolutionary this has worked most of the times. But what happens if a leader asks you to do something unethical? Many times most people would actually carry out this task even though it's unethical or they would know that it's not right. And this tendency of the mind becomes very important to learn so that we can avoid these stupid mistakes. Because I know some of the most stupid mistakes I have done in my life have been just because of this tendency. And maybe you recognize that as well. Someone that you thought was intelligent or acting in your favor, but later it turned out that they were stupid or acted in their own favor. But you followed their advice. And don't be ashamed of this. I have fallen for this many times and it's very, very common. But we want to limit the times we fall for this tendency. Charlie describes a funny situation in the book about a nurse who is about to give medicine to a patient. And the doctor has written a note and he's supposed to take ear drops. And he writes in the note, 10 drops in R.ear. So it looks like he has written rear. So even though this nurse is very intelligent and skilled in her job, she instructs the patient to take 10 drops of these ear drops in his butt every day. You see, most of the times it probably works to follow this tendency because if we have a good leader, we can just follow the instructions. But in this case, she misinterpreted the instruction, but she followed it blindly. Another more cruel example to show this tendency is the Milgram experiment, where a man is posing as an authority figure and instructs a person to give electric shocks to innocent people. So they have this button in front of them and the more they turn it up, the more screams they hear from the other room. But since this man is posing as this authority figure and instructs them to do so, they do not stop. A more funny example is in the book where Charlie describes a person taking a fishing lesson. And it's the first time he's going out fishing in this boat with this instructor. The instructor, he teaches this man that sometimes when the fish has caught the hook, that he sometimes need to let go, to give the rod, and sometimes he need to pull. A while later, when there is actually a fish on the hook, the instructor yells, give him the rod, give him the rod. And then the man, he actually throws his entire fishing gear into the water and it disappears into the river. So he thought give him the rod means throw it after the fish. So that also exemplifies how stupid we can become when we listen blindly to a teacher. And this really exemplifies that we need to choose our teachers and coaches very, very wisely. And I think this is why Charlie puts so much emphasis that we should only work for people we really respect and like as individuals. Because what happens if a teacher or a coach gives you advice that is good for them but not for you? Most people are actually willing to follow it. Another example is if we have a parent who has a tendency to worry a lot, they will actually give advice more to relieve their own worry than what would be of benefit to the child. This could lead to that the person massively underestimates their own capacity and only optimizes for safety rather than to see where you would get most bang for the buck or where there's most potential for them to grow. For example, I have a relative who advised me to work in caregiving or to work in cleaning work. But to me that seemed totally strange because I already did work that paid so much more than that. If you are in your teens or your 20s, it could also happen that your parents give advice in how they would look more successful through your actions rather than what actually would be a benefit to you. And this could create really bizarre habits where a person is pushed to perform in different athletic endeavors or other fields just because the parent wants to look good. And if the person then instead wants to start their own business where usually they would experience a lot of trial and error and lots of failure, maybe the parents would see this as that this would embarrass the family or they would not look so successful, while in reality starting and selling a business could be the most financially rewarding activity you could do. I usually say there is nothing more expensive than free advice. And I say this to remind myself of this tendency, because listening to the wrong people can be the most expensive things you can do, and it can get you sidetracked or it can take you years to recover those mistakes. Another example when it comes to one's parents is that most people, when asked where they have learned about money and finances, answer their parents. And this is a little bit strange because most people are not doing super well financially. So listening to one's parents when it comes to finances might not be the best option. This might also explain why many people end up with about the same net worth as their parents, and maybe also doing the same occupation as their parents. Because we are so hardwired to see our parents as the authority figures in our life and to go to them for advice. While in reality, your parents will have their own agenda and they might not give the best possible options for you. One problem appears if you hire a coach, and maybe sometimes they give good advice, but maybe sometimes they give advice and they actually don't have a clue what they're talking about. So they just say something just to appear smart or not to appear stupid. Following this advice can be very, very costly. And listening to a coach or a teacher blindly can really be a very costly thing. I've done that many times, and I'm trying to become much, much better at thinking independently and seeing so my actions are really good before taking action. One example of this is now when people are asking AI for advice. Sometimes it might work, but a lot of times AI is really off. And the app producers will also have their own agenda of wanting you to use that app as much as possible. So the app might try to give you very much praise and positive feedback, and it might give you positive feedback on ideas that are not actually that great. So in my experience, using AI for research can be really great, but I really need to make the decisions myself and really go through a checklist to see, is this the best option for me? Another interesting example is if you have one friend that you usually go to for advice about relationships, for example. And this friend that you go to they have achieved good things in this area. They have lots of great friends, they have good family relationships and good partner relationship, for example. So they have a track record and you go to them for advice in this area. But once in a while you also go to this friend for example, economic advice or advice on some area that the person has not good experience in. Maybe the person is even struggling in this area, but because of the habit of giving advice, they give you advice also on this topic. And out of habit, you listen to that person. This might become a problem because they might be giving you bad advice. So make sure if you have mentors or someone you're asking or a friend that you're asking advice from, that they really have results in that area that you're asking for. This tendency also explains why influencer marketing works so well and why it's so dangerous. Because the influencer is paid to show a product, for example. So they have a financial incentive to demonstrate that they're using this product. And then all the followers that love this person and see them as an authority, they blindly go out and buy this new product. So can you see how many possible ways it is to fall for this tendency? We're surrounded by it all the time. But luckily there are some remedies how we can make smarter decisions and avoid this tendency. The first one is, we should be surrounded by very intelligent and very ethical people. Because if you have unintelligent or unethical people around you, they will try to convince you to do the same. And you will probably listen to them. 2. This also says that we should choose our heroes very wisely, because who we look up to will influence how we act, what we do in our life. It will be like a moral compass and an inner guidance that we align to. Number 3, we should also choose our boss wisely. So if you work for someone, you should choose a person who you respect and admire. And this is directly Charlie Munger's words. Because if it's a person you admire and respect and who is highly ethical, they will probably not ask you to do unethical things. And another really great way how you can avoid falling for this tendency is having checklists. For example, if you are going to make investments or make any big life decision. So then you can put up criteria for yourself and make sure that this decision matches those criteria. And that is a way how you can make sure to think independently rather than being affected by all this tendency and all the other tendencies that come from outside. And once again, this is really important for us to make smart decisions in our life and avoid all the stupid decisions that we could possibly make. So if you know someone who needs to make smarter decisions, send them this video, and I hope to see you next week.